Ladies and gentlemen of the interwebs, we are live for the Beacon TVL show. It's me, Chris, co-founder of Beacon DeFi, here with our guest today. We have Mehdi, or would you prefer Mid?
No, all
Okay.
both of them work.
From Exponential DeFi. Good to see you again, sir, back on panel.
It's always a
Uh,
pleasure.
yeah, it's been an interesting week, that is for sure. Excited to see what happens, moving forward from here. But what a what a weekend that was. How was the flash crash for you? Are you pretty much unscathed from that?
So the flash crash in DeFi in general hasn't done much. So nothing broke as we expect with DeFi. DeFi is a very robust system where everything makes sense because the Lego blocks of finance in DeFi are built the right way. Because if they are not, they die, and like everything that has some weakness somewhere gets exploited. So whatever stays is actually pretty strong. What we have put last week actually on our newsletter, the Edge newsletter, we talked about how DeFi went unscattered on all of this. So it was really good. In terms of activity inside our platform, we see that actually the most of our investors are pretty bullish. They're looking into they seem to have their target. We had very few people divest and get scared. Mostly people are actually like using the dip to move from dollars to more Bitcoin and more Ethereum exposure.
That's great. Yeah, definitely check out Exponential.fi if you guys are very curious about, investing into their platform over at Exponential DeFi. And thanks again, Mehdi, for being with us today. What an interesting, I guess, with regards to the flash crash, is really more about the bounce back, which I think is the most interesting part, because we weren't necessarily expecting a V-shaped recovery at all, but we're getting something. uh, in fact, it was led a bit by XRP, and I did not put that in the agenda today, but uh, them settling with the SEC was a bit of a bullish sign for other coins, led specifically by a now very rangy Solana that was on the way back up. But we're seeing BNB back above 500, Bitcoin reclaimed 60 for a short moment. We're still ranging around this time. Actually, ETH has been on the move quite a bit. Obviously, outflows and inflows from the ETH ETFs are being helpful with that, but uh, man, that shakeout, while nasty, just to your point, we didn't really, we weren't too, I don't want to say bothered, obviously, because, directionally assets, our portfolios did go down in value, but overall yields have not changed. Yields have been, frankly, really good in the eyes of all this. We didn't see a flight to stables. We did see a lot of dip buying, but overall, from a yield perspective, the volatility has been fantastic. We'll actually talk about that when we talk about exponential and stuff like that in our what we've learned section. But what I did want to talk about with you, Mehdi, and get your take on was specifically the what happened on August 9th, and that is with BitGo in a very interesting move, to say the least. And this is effective of a lot. This is affecting a lot of people in DeFi space because of wrapped Bitcoin. Now, for anybody who's watching this show does not know this, Bitcoin is not a native asset in most of DeFi protocols. You normally need a wrapped version of Bitcoin, an ERC20 version, or whatever other token standard, in order to have this derivative wrapped token available to then stake or use in a way that can get you some yields in the DeFi space. BitGo is one of pretty much the largest custodian there. BTC, which was from RenVM, another company that did a very easy bridge into DeFi for BTC. Unfortunately, they went away after the FTX crash. But this is pretty big news. They talked about a 60-day transition to move WBTC into a multi-jurisdictional custody in a global expansion by merging in a joint venture with what used to be BitThumb. Now it's BitGlobal, where BitGo will now have a minority investment in this new operation. So it'll mainly be held by BitGlobal, But the other problem, well, let's say problem, but the other interesting wrinkle in this is that Justin Sun, yes, that Justin Sun from the Tron blockchain and many other things, is also a part of this joint venture in a strategic way, uh, which has really got a lot of people off guard. This is going to be a 60-day transition period, and they're moving from U.S. custody now to a split custody between, I believe it's Hong Kong and Singapore, and just having the keys spread in a couple different places either as well. Now, the security model for WBTC is not changing. Mostly, you won't see much of a change in front of you. All the changes are really just going to be behind the scenes. Your experience in terms of using WBTC.network to mint and redeem coins should not change. But definitely the underpinnings are a bit different. Just wanted to get your initial thoughts on this Medi, because I know you mentioned something very interesting. We just had a talk about my vacation over the weekend, and you had a fun fact about WBTC in the US. So
yeah, I mean, I would love to touch base at some stage on the market movements and the yield movements that you mentioned, but like on this WBTC, I think this is like the biggest news of the week. For context, like the whole exponential team was all hands on deck this weekend working on like this, and to understand what's the scope, because like once you have some movement like this one, you can have a change in terms of like the risk related to WBTC.
right.
And so based on our research, the first thing that struck us is like, okay, we had a South Dakota trust before, with a New York trust before, and they were both under US regulation, which is pretty similar for everything related to custody processes and technology and so on. It was done by BitGo. BitGo has been around for more than 10 years, almost as old as Bitcoin itself, but
Yeah.
as old as Ethereum. They have a very good track record. They have great proof of reserve systems. We were actually pretty happy with WBTC as a financial instrument. Now there is like BitGlobal coming in. There is like 2 additional jurisdictions, and so all of a sudden for us, it means it triggers like more factors of attack. If you want to think about how we look at the risk here, is like at first you had the risk related to just a US jurisdiction and 1 point of centralization. Now you have 3 jurisdictions and 2 points of centralization. Like BitGlobal can do things, BitGo can do things. It's almost like the weakest link on a line is how you have to assess the risk. You have to assess the risk on the weakest link, and so we have been looking into the custody system in Hong Kong and the custody system in Singapore. It appears that in Hong Kong it is regulated, but in Singapore, BitGlobal is not yet regulated, and so there is a weak point there, and so that triggers like real question marks. We went also beyond that to look into the track record of Justin Sun.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at, for example, he acquired True USD at some
Yep.
stage, or like and he also like had an acquisition of the UOB exchange, the Ponyx exchange.
Yep.
So there are good reasons to be worried. There was obviously no DPEG so far, except like for short time periods on True USD. I think that the CEO of BitGo went on a live stream yesterday just to reassure everyone that the processes are going to remain the same. As we did the research, we have seen that it seems fine so far. On like it's not gonna like collapse in 60 days. It's not gonna. I don't expect like a real run, but it is possible, of course. If there is more information, as it is right now, it is fine. but we have to be more careful. And so we're continuing to do our research right now, with a potential downgrade for WBTC in terms of the risk rating.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Do you guys, with that said, do you guys follow other brokers like Threshold, like Nomic, BTC.B from Core Labs, things like that? Or do you guys track those assets for risk reward ratings as well?
Yes. So Threshold TBTC, for example, is a very good alternative to WBTC. The issue was mostly in terms of like their BD work, or like the liquidity of TBTC across chains. It's
Right.
actually pretty hard for them to do it. I know Matt, the co-founder, pretty well. I met him like earlier this year, and like the issue of TBTC has always been just on the market side. I think on the way that it is built is super robust. It's actually much better than like WBTC. But because TBTC is minted right now on Ethereum
Right.
and that contract does not exist on other places, it's expensive to mint, and it is expensive. It creates risk on the bridges. So when you want to get TBTC on Arbitrum, you have to depend on a bridge, and
Right.
that bridge, that the risk of the bridge itself gets included in our risk framework into the asset, because actually if your TBTC on Arbitrum is exposed to that risk on the bridge. So all this to say is that TBTC was not having the best like liquidity, and was still a little bit risky due to the really dependency on the bridges. Now we see Coinbase that announces a cbBTC, which would start directly on Base, potentially go on other platforms, and this speaks a lot to the overall anti-fragility of DeFi, in the sense that we had a key player where with BitGo that was doing something great. Something bad is happening there. It seems like it's related to the fact that WBTC was not creating enough revenue for BitGo, and so they decided to divest it. The only buyer, it seems, or the best buyers, it seems, is related to Justin Sun. The market recognizes that there is more risk there, and is now looking for an alternative. And we have seen like a lot of people who are looking into like creating a new form of Bitcoin. Ourselves, we were thinking like, if we need to do it, we could do it. We have everything in terms of technology and processes to do that, but we prefer to focus on our core business, of course, which is like to make DeFi accessible and let other people create these financial instruments. But we were like considering it at some stage. Now that we see that Coinbase is going for it, it's less of a priority. We just need a good form of a Bitcoin that works on EVMs and on other chains, and that where you can have like DeFi on top of Bitcoin. And so I'm pleased to see that Coinbase is looking into it. We have seen that Avishal from Electric Capital as well was like looking to finance a team that would like put Bitcoin on layer twos through like restaking validators.
Yeah.
So all of this shows you a little bit like that DeFi is a place where like it gets better over time, and I love to see that. I love to see like it's not just like you get shaken. It's like you also like adapt to that and try to build a better form of finance.
Yeah, and you mentioned a lot of stuff there, so I want to unpack quite a bit of that. So we'll start with like the up in arms portion of Justin Sun being a part of this partnership, mainly because he has his own version of wrapped BTC on Poloniex, which is another CEX that he's involved with. It's another form of WBTC. It's got quite a bit of liquidity. The actual BitGo WBTC on Tron has very little liquidity on Tron. So to say this was a strategic move for him is an understatement. He wants to try and get as much of the same BTC together, I guess, to prevent against fragmentation in that space. He did come on his Twitter and did mention that this was a strategic investment for him. He has no access to the keys. He cannot move any funds. He can't access the BitGo reserve. So to kind of allay those fears, I think the real issue, I think it's warranted with the issues with TrueUSD, with other things. And you mentioned, there are other teams looking to possibly acquire BitGo. Galaxy actually tried to and then backed out of the deal before then. So this is a very interesting partnership here, and I guess it's really more of a wait and see of what happens moving forward. So
just to build on this, like I totally agree. Like it was soothing to see that like nothing is going to change in practice, but you never know when things change. The issue is that now Justin Sun has the ability to change management. He has the ability to like make a change, and then like us as like DeFi holders of WBTC, we need to be a little bit more alert in a sense. And so that's the position where we are. It's good that it stays the same. It has to stay the same for the transition to happen well. The question is more like, in 2 years, are we still gonna have a WBTC that's as strong? Knowing Justin Sun, that's why we had to go back to his track record, and that's why we had to look into like, okay, what did he do with TrueUSD? TrueUSD, no depeg, but actually like the market cap went down from 6 to 1 billion, I think. And so that tells you that there will be change. So for some DeFi holders who are, for example, doing market making between WBTC and TBTC, that's going to be like a payout in terms of yield. You're going to like receive a lot of yield from like people exchanging one for the other. For people who are doing bridging with across, who's moving WBTC across chains, they're going to make some money on the yield as well. But overall, like I think that there is like an evolution here where the market is looking for alternatives to WBTC.
Yeah, and as a reaction to that, I need to find where that was. So NGMI from DeFi Llama, posted this over the weekend, and I remember seeing it, and I was like, oh. Apparently there was something that was brought up in the MakerDAO forums about proposing to not allow more exposure and collateral to new mints of WBTC due to this. And this is really what got a lot of people talking. This is what I heard in a lot of my network back channels about, should you start to defend your WBTC positions, consider, looking into other things. This one was the part that opened a lot of eyes, I think, because I think especially with what happened with Curve, with Michael Egoroff, and Justin Sun being one of the white knights, by the way, if you want to call him that, to come in and take a lot of that CRV out of his hands. So now that, he doesn't really own a lot of, if any, much CRV at all anymore, especially after he just recently got liquidated. But having more people, more key opinion leaders, some KOLs coming in to strategically come in and help chip, not the word I'm not looking for is not chip away, but, and I don't want to use the word decentralize either, but to have more third parties coming in to help, I guess, lessen the network effect of some of the things like this from getting things too far out of control. If he didn't have the track record he had, there probably wouldn't be the same amount of scrutiny. But like you mentioned, what we talked about before we came on, there's a huge hole with regards to wrap Bitcoin brokers and custodians outside of BitGo. I mean, obviously Threshold and some of these others, but we need more competition in this space to help strengthen to help harden the network, find all of the bugs that are out there, and essentially have more bridges in and out of DeFi for this prized asset that obviously is a huge talking point right now with regards to politics and everything else that's out there about Bitcoin right now. So yeah, I'm curious. I think we're just taking a pretty balanced approach and trying not to panic about this because this is just talk. But I will say that Mark Zeller, who is a big contributor to the Aave DAO, wanted to, I don't think he's speaking on behalf of the DAO, but just addressing his thoughts on this. Aave so far is just going to wait and see. They have the ability to replace WBTC. They've done it before. They did it on Aave on Avalanche to bring in BTC.B as another native BTC product. So there is that approach. They can replace WBTC if they have to.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that like this is just a question of time. We have time. There is like 50 more days to look into this before
That's a good point.
any transition. The whole market is looking into it. I don't think that there is like any emergency because like until that transition period, Justin Sun cannot do anything. I don't think that it's in his interest to do anything and to start meeting WBTCs. When we looked at the processes and the fact that there are just the regulatory requirements, I don't think they can do it either. And so it will take really a dark side. You really need to think like, oh, like they have to convince like 8 out of 13 people in the DAO and a merchant and do it in a jurisdiction that would not put them in jail in order to actually mess with WBTC. This seems like really hard to do.
Yeah.
It's really hard to mess with WBTC right now, but over the long term, you don't know how these things can change. Like you can change the charter, you can change the regulatory framework, you can change the management, and so that's why it's actually good that we have these alternatives. The market is going to do the right thing. There is no more perfect market, in my opinion, than the ones of crypto because they're open 24/7, they're permissionless, and that's why poly market gives you like the best predictions for like the US election and things like that.
Exactly. One thing I will also note, and I don't have a link to it here that I thought, Threshold, you mentioned Threshold. They very much had a statement ready for this, not a shock, with regards to this news, saying that TBTC, Threshold BTC, just became the most important asset in DeFi, and offered very easy ways to use DeFi Llama Swap to easily get a quick route from BitGo's WBTC to Threshold's TBTC, which of course would help their liquidity issues right away.
Yes, it's chain equal Ethereum.
Oh, of course.
Link. And that's what hurts actually, and that's what makes probably people excited about cbBTC or any other alternative, which would be like based on base chain, which is like 10 times, 100 times cheaper, and like minting and unminting is something that is important.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, I don't know why my screen is a little like pixelated, but in any case, Coinbase last night literally just tweeted cbBTC and kind of dropped the mic and walked away. They had a coming. They realized they had to append that with coming soon, and then of course Base followed up with Based. Head of Base Jesse Pollock came back and said that he's excited about kickstarting crypto again on Base as they're looking to do and building a massive Bitcoin economy on Base. These are very much related, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't noticed this, now with that said, with regards to TBDC, Threshold does have a very good foothold on Base. The issue is getting your TBTC onto Base. You can easily swap for it, if you are on Base through Aerodrome or anything like that. But to see Coinbase come through, and as you mentioned, Mehdi, you guys thought about creating a custom wrapped BTC. Coinbase has a lot of firepower into the ability to create their own wrapped BTC here, and for them to custody and broker it, man, I hope this is decentralized. That's
Oh,
my
I don't
main
think
thing.
that cbBTC will be very decentralized. I think they will just build it the same as USDC. And so I think they will be putting basically the balance sheet in the middle. And I think it's fine because WBTC was basically the same thing. You had the power, the financial power of BitGo with everything backed one-to-one. I think Coinbase, based off what they did with USDC, will also back it one-to-one. And so that's all we ask for in this type of wrappers. If you look at the wrapper of Threshold, that's actually a fully decentralized one based on
Right.
smart contracts. The only issue there is that it's not so easy for them to incentivize the use of TBTC. And even if like they had like amazing yield on base pools, like TBTC ETH was at some stage 170% yield.
Right.
We did not launch them because TBTC itself had that dependency on a bridge that was really new on a base, which was like a new chain as well. And the fact when you have something that's new, it's actually more risky in DeFi, and so therefore we were not able to basically like push those kind of like wonderful yield opportunities. With the idea that they were actually too risky, and TBTC on base is a little bit risky still.
Yeah. Now I know that I've seen Beefy talk about concentrated liquidity pools on their platform for this in response. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways to really kind of go about this, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But to see them publicize this move, I think is interesting. I would love to see them be transparent about their proof of reserves on the Bitcoin that they hold here. I think that will be the key, because in general, most CEXs are not very transparent about that. So for them to be transparent about, all of the minted cbBTC that'll be available, where you can redeem it, how much is available, I think that will all be key into, again, pushing more competitors into this space, amplifying use cases.
Totally. And I would add to this that it seems like Base is going for the Bitcoin layer twos. And there were a lot of Bitcoin layer twos trying to create a Bitcoin economy on L2. And so all these Bitcoin L2 chains, if they come to start to compete with Base, it's going to be harder for them to kickstart their growth. And at Exponential, like we are betting on the fact that these Bitcoin layer twos are going to bring in nice yield on Bitcoin. The world is hungry for yield on Bitcoin because
They are.
they're very like it's a deflationary asset without so much use. There is no inner inflation like it has it with like staking that is like already starting with 3 or 4%. On Bitcoin, there is not much you can do with it. And so most people are sitting on their Bitcoins and they're looking for yield. And so actually 1/3 of the investment opportunities on Exponential are related to Bitcoin. And so
Really? Okay.
yes. It's
Oh, so
actually
WBTC is a real big deal for you guys.
it is a big deal for us,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah, and so that's why we were like all hands on deck and reviewing every information, looking back over the past 10 years on like the journey of Justin Sun and all of that.
Yeah.
Looking
No,
into the
that makes a lot of sense. So Susan has this interesting, who's on panel recently. Thank you, Susan, for being here. Transparency won't be coming anytime soon to Coinbase. What I will say Coinbase is a public company. If you're a shareholder in Coinbase, demand transparency. Use your voting power as a shareholder to demand transparency for this kind of stuff. I know that they may have a public event, they may have a couple of virtual calls. If you are a Coinbase holder, demand that they are transparent on everything that they have into these ventures going into DeFi. It's to their advantage for their optics, as well as for what they're doing, at least in all of their L2 stuff, to be so. I want to take a quick minute to just obviously thank Mehdi for being here, but also if you're liking what you see, check them out, exponential.fi. Also join our free group. It's called Total Value Locked. It's the namesake of this lovely show, and it's absolutely free. School.com/beacon, and you can learn to become a DeFi pro from our group, best in the business. But I talked about this on the Twitter post we have. We actually are giving away some free seats to our monthly bootcamp that I'm leading on Saturday. If you're interested, feel free to check on TVL on how you can get a free seat for yourself to learn about concentrated liquidity. That's our focus topic here. But again, check out Exponential DeFi. Check out school.com/beacon. Get accessible information to get into DeFi safely and securely. And yeah, like and subscribe. Help us out with the algorithm. We greatly appreciate that. And do you guys have a YouTube channel at Exponential?
Yes, we do. And we're
follow them as well.
We're preparing a new video that will show you actually where the DeFi yield comes from. And so I think
yes,
to do that. We worked on it for the past 6 months with a great illustrator. And so I think it's going to be fun. I hope you will like it. It's going to be a 2-minute video. We'll post it probably next week.
Yeah, let me know when that comes out. We're happy to amplify that. Happy to use that in our groups as well.
Awesome.
Would love to get that out there for you guys. So you mentioned Base. You mentioned Bitcoin Fi. These are big hot topics right now. Base has an advantage here if they're building the biggest Bitcoin economy ever, because they are part of the OP Superchain. And guess what? The Optimism Superchain does have a Bitcoin L2 called Bob, Build on Bitcoin. And they have created a new announcement as of 2 days ago on Monday to bring a new interoperability layer into the Superchain and beyond. This is a little bit different than what we talked about a couple months ago with Velodrome having their MetaDex liquidity layer between the different OP superchains. But what they're doing here is just trying to create a large network effect by having all of these chains that are built on top of OP and part of the superchain. Now, there are multiple blockchains out there like Mantle, Manta Pacific, and a couple others that are built on OP stack but are not part of the superchain. But Base, Mode, Bob, Risk, I'm sure I'm leaving a couple out. Optimism, of course, that are going to be together like we talked about with Optimism Superfest, will now have these things coming to the entire superchain, I believe by Q1 next year. So you guys are very curious. This is not going to happen right away, but these are the things that they're looking to create. One's going to be a message passing protocol so that really any protocol can talk to another protocol within the superchain. This is going to allow cross-chain messaging, because if you think about how does blockchain work between blockchains, ultimately, if you follow the layer 0 model, it's just cross-chain messaging saying, hey, you have this balance on this wallet, debit that, credit with this token, credit that amount on this wallet. And that's really, for the most part, if you want to break it down to the basic area, that's kind of how it's working overall. Obviously, you have smart contracts that control all that in the middle, and that's what makes it different than on a regular payment remittance network. But it's generally just messaging. If you talk to Layer 0 and you check out their docs, all they are is a messaging protocol. Now they have liquidity layers built on top of that, Stargate being the center of that. But the Superchain ERC20 is going to be a new universal token standard for the OP stack. So this is not only going to apply to just the Superchain members, but to all blockchains that have that are on the OP stack. So they'll have this ability out the box to have a universal token standard. This will help with definitely with backing, with cross-chain messaging, security most likely as well. And having just universal token standards will help with slippage, things like that, moving forward. They came out with fault proofs finally after a very long time, a couple weeks ago. And that'll also be available to everybody in the Superchain, as well as creating a chain set so that you can have, I guess, clusters of data back and forth that you can read information from. So this isn't quite a DA layer, a data availability layer, but it is interesting. I'm going to also point out, because I'm not gonna lie, I'm an Avalanche fan. Avalanche has had this for years, but it's good to see. But what I will say is this: I'm sure Avalanche will come out and actually say, I think they have. Uh, Not everyone's using Avalanche, and in terms of scaling, in terms of services coming, they have different choices. A lot of people have really just bought into the whole stack system, right? With the OP stack, the Arbitrum Orbit stack, Polygon CDK. It seems like a lot more protocols are going that route than doing subnets on Avalanche, for example. That doesn't mean that Avalanche's subnets are not going to be great. They are great. There are a lot of great institutional and Web2 companies taking advantage of blockchain tech through Avalanche. This is just something that's a little bit different, something more accessible to all of us, at least, as everyday investors in this space. So, Mehdi, just wanted to get your opinion on this. Do you think this is? Do you think this will be an improvement for most users?
Yeah, I met Alexei about 6 months ago, and we were talking about what he's thinking about this. I think they are doing as a team a really amazing stuff. The core thing is how to communicate with the Bitcoin chain. And
Right.
so it's very easy for EVMs or like more advanced blockchains to communicate themselves because they have more instruments to basically, or more instruments to be able to talk and to read the message. So basically what you want is like, for example, if you deposit a Bitcoin on the wallet of the OP chain, the OP superchain, the OP superchain wants to know that you have deposited it. So that's great. That's easy to go into and deposit. Now, on the way back, it's a more complicated story, because if you deposit back on the OP superchain and want to go back to Bitcoin, Bitcoin needs to listen
Yep.
to the OP superchain. The OP superchain knows how to listen to Bitcoin, but Bitcoin doesn't know how to listen to the OP superchain. And so you always have this problem where it goes almost like one way from Bitcoin out. And so one of the ideas was to get Bitcoin to get more advanced with all that discussion about the OPCAT,
Yep.
OPCAT, and that the fact that actually Satoshi had everything prepared so for Bitcoin to be more advanced, but also commented these and said, we should not open the Pandora's box, and we should not start working on this yet. So the question is, when is the community of Bitcoin going to be open to of developers mostly to be open to open the Pandora's box, create more dependencies with other chains, and be able to use Bitcoin in and out into other chains? I think right now it's going to be a hard thing to do. It's becoming harder and harder to use Bitcoin for outside its core role. Bitcoin is basically becoming a fight for a new reserve currency, to become to disrupt the central bank, to become a real store of value that is competing with gold. And so if they want to do that job well, Bitcoin needs to do that job well and be immune to governments and so on. It needs to stay the way that it is. It needs to stay on proof of work, and it needs to be a little bit more dull and more constant over time. So I don't think that the community of Bitcoin, especially with all the ETFs, Wall Street coming in and so on, is going to be eager to change Bitcoin to be easy to use in DeFi. But because Bitcoin sees itself as the most important part of DeFi, is changing the money.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because when you started talking, it made me think of something that I didn't put on the well, it actually happened at Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville, and that is Starknet was the first pretty much group to do a full zero knowledge proof fulfilled on Bitcoin Lightning. And this is important because they can do this already with Ethereum, even though they're not technically EVM compatible because they have their own VM called Cairo. But the fact that they were able to get a layer 2 solution to prove a zero knowledge proof on Bitcoin means that it's open in the future. That door is open now, because they can actually prove both on ETH and on BTC. There is an opening in the door to hopefully get away from what we've talked about with other people we've had on the show, where you have a lot of independently operated nodes and then like off-chain indexers, which really just handle the transactions and then stamp metadata on the backside. That system is okay, but is it completely scalable? No, not in a very efficient way, not like this. To be able to have zero knowledge proofs and then just use that system moving forward with instant finality and privacy and all the great things that come with zero knowledge proofs. Yeah, it's an interesting idea to figure out which is going to be the way forward. I'm personally more bullish on this method as opposed to having, calling for a revolution for self-hosting and decentralized not provers, but indexers and stuff like that off chain, because there's fault points there. Whereas if you do it this way through, established Web3 builders like Starkware, with Starks or Snarks, whichever way you want to go about it with their cryptography. Yeah, I'm really interested to see what they do here. But yeah, to your point, it's a difficult move on the backside, really just from the Bitcoin side, and that's always been the issue. It's like, how can you maintain the security and both the payment settlement on layer 1 Bitcoin? I hope they get here through this method, because I think this will be easier to digest than trying to expand a network of indexers and try a more grassroots approach. Nothing wrong with that. So anybody who's building that, like we've had MotoSwap on for an AMA, it's cool to do that with BRC20, but I still think overall, this might be the cleaner solution. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that before we move on?
No, I actually just agree with you, and yeah, not much.
Okay, cool. So speaking of BTC, because I noticed that Susan had mentioned something while we were talking about Coinbase, about the Crypto Made in America mantra. That's a fun little segue. Thank you for that, Susan. So, in a cute little publicity stunt, Marathon Digital, big miner, has said that they're going to now stamp metadata on all blocks that they win with the actual statement "Made in the USA." And this got a big chuckle out of me, because you can stamp whatever you want on the block, I guess, if you happen to finalize it and own it. So, yeah, there is that.
I love it. Personally, I love it. I think Bitcoin is very aligned with American values. So now you have it on the way back, which is like, basically America can be proud of having Bitcoin mining. And just like 4 years ago, most of the Bitcoin mining was happening in China.
Yeah.
And so if as we are getting Wall Street get into this, I'm very happy with like this idea from Marathon to just like say, hey, this is American. Let's get the whole US behind this, and not behind cbDCs, which are central
Exactly.
bank digital currencies. I think.
Yeah. So, this is a very interesting. It just made me laugh. I thought it would, what obviously, to most people, if you're curious, does it mean anything? No, it's just a message on the blockchain. Overall, that's all that it is. It doesn't prove that the U.S. owns a block or that they own a specific piece of Bitcoin. Um, I mean, technically, I guess because they hold that in their wallet, they would at that point. But um, yeah, I think it's definitely a publicity stunt. They're definitely gonna get in the news for this for sure, and they're actually raising money through a big sale of convertible notes um, to raise more money to buy Bitcoin. So they see the writing on the wall. They see what they're picking up what everybody's putting down. So we'll see what happens moving on from here. But I agree with Susan. We need to continue to keep decentralization global with regards to Bitcoin mining. Um, there are multiple companies that mine that have facilities all around the world, not just in the U.S. BitDeer is one that I can think of now that they're in places like in the Himalayas with their farms. I can only imagine that we're soon going to see, some type of Bitcoin farms. We already have them in Iowa, but to see them in places like at the top of the 14s in Colorado or in the Canadian Rockies or something like that will be interesting. I'm personally pushing for a network of hot air balloons like Google X's Loon project that are all miners that send things back down. That's not fast enough. That's not a big deal. But it is what it is.
Well, with the
And
Starlink now, you can be mining offshore. You can be mining
you
on
could.
like so you have like energy efficiency in many places that were too remote to bring that energy to the places where it's consumed in the cities, for example, in northern Canada or offshore Nigeria. Like you can just have a flare and like you put like a turbine, a gas turbine, and a small one, and it creates electricity. You put a Bitcoin mining rig with it, and you link it with Starlink, and then you have like a way to monetize that energy and to keep it clean as well.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that Susan was on the program 2 weeks ago. She was talking about how there are companies who are selling miners to people in a way. It was almost like winning. It was like it's like a lottery, right? You have the miners going, and there's like a 1 in 50,000 chance to actually win some Bitcoin. Obviously, it wouldn't be too much Bitcoin, but it would be some because you're part of a larger pool. So, yeah, in a way that makes it somewhat DePIN, which is a nice little segue into our next thing. Did you watch the Olympics at all, Mehdi?
A little bit, yeah, of course.
Yeah. What was your favorite part of the Olympics?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Well, the Moroccan team where I come from got bronze in soccer, and so
Yes,
we
they did. That was great for them. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Viva
that's
Maroc.
this is something that doesn't happen often to have an African team be in the top three, which is
Yeah,
amazing. And so that was a super exciting moment for me.
yeah. Morocco, of course, did very well in track and field. They're well known for their for people like in distance running and stuff like that. So yeah, glad to see that they were able to represent and do what they do well here. Did you watch the breakdancing?
I did. I found it not exactly breakdancing. It was a little bit different,
Yeah, a
but
little like
I
yeah.
think it was interesting nonetheless. I love the memes. I think
Yeah, the memes are
we
great.
are
They
very
were
harsh with Australia, but all good.
oh, it was immaculate. I mean, it brought a lot of eyes on things. Personally, I'm a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of extreme sports. I watch everything, but I did enjoy watching the skating, like the skateboarding events and stuff like that. I enjoy watching that stuff. It's pretty cool. Um, in any case, crypto was around in Paris because they had an unexpected DePIN installation. Uh, I personally have not invested in this, but if you're looking into getting into hyper local weather, they had 40 different weather stations provided by WeatherXM. This is an Ethereum mainnet based um, service. And basically, if you purchase their weather stations, they run for about $900. They provide hyper-local weather information. As you can see, they provide all kinds of sensors for like humidity, temperature, wind, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, you can. Oh, it's live on Arbitrum One now. Good to see. So if you're curious, because a lot of the DePIN stuff is on Cosmos or Solana, so to see actual EVM chains having some DePIN is pretty cool. So yeah, if you are curious about this, that's going to be in our show notes. Of course, you can head to TVL to get that. But yeah, I don't know how big you are on DePIN, but I think this is all pretty interesting.
I think so too, but I don't know much about it, to be honest. I'm more centered on DeFi.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, it's just decentralized, physical infrastructure networks. So all you do is you purchase here, much like Grass, much like all these other AI training ones that are coming out now. Basically, you provide resources, and then you are incentivized through tokens for providing
sounds
information.
Great. I think even like running on the Bitcoin miners that are like offshore, those could be also like
absolutely
used as DePIN, I guess.
Yeah, miner in a box, really. That's all. You just plug it in and it just starts working. You're plugged in like an ice cream machine at McDonald's or something like that, just pushing information back and forth. So, but yeah, that I saw that. I thought that was pretty cool. The Olympics just ended on Sunday, so hopefully you all enjoyed your time. It was seen by more than 2.2 billion people overall. So the fact that that people were able to spot these machines at different places. This was located. This I guess looks like this is one of the Rugby Sevens games here in the Stade de France. So yeah, interesting that they were able to point that out there, that people noticed that. So I could definitely see that for like track and field would be good to have, the idea of having like measuring the wind to make sure there wasn't like an advantage or a disadvantage in all curiosity. But I mean, there's so much technology now in sports, it's unreal. So to see that there is decentralized or DePIN style information out there that you can, help provide or at least profit off of is really cool, in my personal opinion. So before we move on to our discussion portion, I did want to talk about, we like to talk about how you can spend and off-road your crypto quite a bit. I'm sure this is probably something that you guys get at Exponential as well. What's the best way to spend my crypto gains without, leaving DeFi? Metamask announced today they have a new Metamask card. Now, of course, heads up, this is not available to U.S. residents. This is just being piloted in both the UK and in the EU. So if you happen to have an ability to pilot this is for you. They have partnered with banks, or BAANX, as well as MasterCard to provide this. The interesting part about this, so there's a couple different cards out there. Shout out to Cypher. I've used Cypher a couple times. Of course, there are others that are out there in DeFi. FinTech is a little funky when it comes to doing this on the US side, so don't really recommend it anymore. But outside of that, working with some of these others, it was pretty cool. This is based on MetaMask portfolio. A solution
for the US in the next 6 months.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, you will have like a debit card for the US.
Okay.
US customers. We'll start with the US. We always start with the hardest markets first, and then
why? Yeah, let me know about that. Yeah, that always our users are always looking for ways to be able to spend their gains.
Exactly. And like, especially with yield, like yield is almost like a budget that you can have every month. And so you could receive like the $2,000 of yield that you made this month and have it on your debit card for you to use and feel good about.
Yeah, exactly. So the one note for settlement, you have to actually put your funds in Linea, which is fine. Linea is not shocking. Linea is the zero knowledge EVM chain from Consensus, who's the parent company of MetaMask. So no surprise that you'd have to either do it through, I didn't think it was going to be through anything but Linea or ETH mainnet. But the fact that it's on an L2 makes it cheap and hopefully makes it fast. Their partner is with banks, and I thought I had it here. I guess I didn't, but anyway, for banks, Swiss Bank, if I'm not mistaken. Swiss bank, which seems to be the norm for a lot of these now. USDC, USDT, and wrapped are the specific tokens you can use. And if you qualify, you will see it here in MetaMask Portfolio. So portfolio.metamask.io. You can check that out. And if it's available to you, you'll see it here under card. So feel free to check that out. It's a pilot program. You will of course have to KYC, so keep that in mind, through their Crypto Life Banks partner. So, but yeah, you just have to bridge funds over to Linea, which there are many bridges to do so, whether through their official bridge or through other third-party bridges, such as Squid Router, Orbiter, Rhino, just to name a few, Across, Jumper. So there you go. Awesome. What are your thoughts on this? I know you just mentioned that you guys were looking at a possible solution for that, but obviously probably something that a lot of your users ask for a lot, right?
Yeah, I think the reality is that it's all about that KYC process. The KYC processes in everything related to crypto are really hard. They are painful. The good thing is that once you are inside Coinbase or inside Exponential, you already have KYC'd. We made it as efficient and as simple as possible. For us to get you a card is very easy. And so that's something that is on our roadmap. We have found a very good vendors for the US, as well as Europe and Latin America. So we are going to push that. The first thing that we want to do first, before all of that, is to allow you to get your yield and to store it and be very clear on receive your yield in USDC. Right now, what we do is we auto compound the yield for everybody because that's actually the best financial decision. But some people are going to want to extract just a little bit of that yield or the exact yield amount that they did every month or every week. And so we're working on that first.
Really? So as opposed to auto compounding until people want to remove, which is normally what people would want to do, you can allow them to take their yields and profits onto an actual spendable card.
Exactly. That's the idea. That's a revolutionary idea. I'm speaking to you about it before most other people, but basically we think that this is going to be a big thing for our users.
Well, that's some alpha right there. Appreciate you for talking about that. So, yeah, I mean, this has been something that people have been working on for years, right? This is not a new, back from the days where it took 7 days to get off a Polygon.
Yes.
It's people have been looking for ways to off-road their funds in a much easier way. Unfortunately, we talked about this a couple months ago with the breakdown of Synapse and those brokers that use that service through, with Evolve. Unfortunately, that's still being talked about in court through bankruptcy hearings. So, unfortunately, finding the right fintech for this to work is unfortunate, and it still needs work. But as long as you can find good vendors that have well vetted underlying technology, I think there's still a future. I still hold out hope that things like this work out. And yeah, really excited to hear more about this when you guys start rolling that out. So
yeah, we will definitely talk to you about it.
Awesome.
Once it's ready. It does take to put your balance sheet on there as a company as well. Like that helps a lot, having your balance sheet to be able to help have an easy flow of money without having to wait like that 7 days to offload from Arbitrum or Polygon is something important as well.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we ended up talking way longer than I thought on the regular news. So I just wanted to give you some time, Mehdi, to kind of talk about Exponential. Thing you want to talk about during our little spotlight session. So please.
Oh, thank you. Well, Exponential is basically the Coinbase for DeFi. It's a place where you can get access to yield in a very easy way with a few clicks. We made funding with your bank account or with your crypto super easy. We made the whole interface to look for pools and yield opportunities very streamlined as well. And you just have to do a few clicks to invest and get to your yield. The performance of your yield is also like very transparent. So you get to know how much did you make out of yield, how much did you get out of asset appreciation. So that's basically our value proposition, and I think you should try it out. We have a promo right now until the end. If you do it before the end of the month, you can get 3% on your Bitcoin for I don't know how long, but you get 3% on your Bitcoins on platform. It applies to BTC or to WBTC or to even like pools that are BTC based, like we have across BTC and Voltka BTC, which are like a bridging pool and a lending pool. And so I think this is like a great opportunity to try Exponential, and most importantly, to get some yield on those Bitcoins.
Yeah, and we have a great partnership with Exponential. They have great education. They recognize our mission in this space. We have a very shared mission to help educate and also to make DeFi accessible to all. So for those of you who are a little too, they find self-custody a little too adventurous, I definitely recommend checking out Exponential. Great group of people. Had a good time meeting with them in Denver. Of course, thanks of course to Mehdi to being on panel on rotation, and just having excellent analysis on a lot of the stuff we've been talking about today. Fantastic stuff. And thanks so much again for being on panel with us. I'm excited to have you back for more moving forward, and especially once you get these new products on the roadmap coming out. Would love to have you either demo them or just let our groups know more about them. And
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. And yeah, we definitely share the same mission. And I'm so glad that you're doing all the efforts that you do in order to help spread the word about DeFi and tell us about what is important to know and how it works and all of that. Thank you.
Of course. We're here for the long run, brother. I know you are too. So excited to work together to see these goals happen. So I will say we do have one question in for call for help. I'll answer that just in literally 2 words. The question, and I basically for call for help is I ask questions in our communities, or people will often ask questions when they try and ask us questions when they reach out. So we regularly ask these, but the one question that I wanted to talk about today was there's a 2-parter from John. It was how long until I see a return, and how much can I make back on X amount of money? 2 very common questions we get. So I just want to handle that real quick. How long until I see a return? Rewards are streamed every couple seconds, depending on what blockchain you're on. So right away. It may not be tons of money. It might be like a fraction of a penny, but essentially your returns when you are in DeFi happen immediately. You don't have to wait. That's the beauty of DeFi. You can also harvest it as many times as you like. You just have to pay for the gas. So you may want to wait and not do it 15 times a day. I know in the beginning it'll be a little addictive. I understand that, especially once you get in here and you see all the great yields that you can get. And with regards to how much I can make back on X amount of money, the best way I can answer that question is when you see yield, generally it's an APR or an APY, which means it's an annual rate. So take whatever that rate is, assuming it doesn't change, take in your investment, multiply it by that rate and divide by 365. And you will get the amount that you should be getting on a daily basis. You can of course change that to 12 if you want monthly, or 52 if you want it weekly. So that's essentially it. Do rates go up and down? Yes, but many of our protocols that both I talk about and of course they talk about Exponential really don't change all that much, or they stay within a range. So you have an idea what you're getting. In either case, you're definitely beating the bank. You're definitely not having to stick your neck out in the world of traditional finance with stocks and bonds. Of course, it's always good to have a diversified portfolio, but specifically here in crypto and DeFi, obviously with effort, with confidence, I think you can get a much better return. So with that said, guys, thanks for joining us for another great show. We'll have another new panel on for next week. And again, thanks to Mehdi from Exponential DeFi. Check them out. And we'll see you guys around. Take care. 07. Beacons up, banks down. See you later, guys.